would it be feasible for somebody like myself to drive around the world? And the answer slowly became yes.
Say 100 people have contacted me with the dream of driving around the world. Of those 100 people, one has gotten to the start line.
People with disabilities can achieve great things.
Mike needs a vehicle like that because it's who he is. He needs power, he needs strength, he needs speed.
Yesterday was bar none the toughest driving I've ever done in my life.
He'd collapse almost completely. Like, you know, he'd be utterly exhausted.
I'm physically beat, I'm emotionally wiped out. Whoever said driving around the world was easy.
Departing Quetta, we were traveling on unpaved, winding, potholed, single-lane roads with plenty of detours. Some 6 hours later, we'd only clocked 200 kilometers pulling into the small town of Laura Lee. We took out our road maps and decided to head on to the next major town of Deri Ghazi Khan. Rafi consulted with some of the locals who advised that DGK was 300 kilometers distance and could be completed in about 5 hours. I posed the question, what was the terrain like? And they replied with, not too bad, just a little hilly. For the next 5 hours, we slowly made our way on single-lane roads, frequently passing slowly moving transport trucks. Just before sunset, we arrived at a village that we all thought or hoped was DGK, only to find out we weren't even close. We felt that we had little choice except to keep going, even though darkness was approaching. With Rafi driving the escort vehicle behind me, we started up what was to be a major mountain pass on this narrow, bumpy, single-lane road. Just as we crested at the top of the 6,000-foot mountain pass, we entered a storm. And then as we worked our way across the pass, up and down more peaks, we were faced with loads of oncoming transport trucks who weren't prepared to stop or pull over for us. Often being the smaller of the two vehicles, I was forced to back up on the single-lane mountain road, sometimes as much as 300 or 400 meters. It was quite perilous as there were no guardrails protecting us from plummeting thousands of feet down the mountain. It took us over 15 hours to drive just 492 kilometers.
Never have I felt fearful, you know, being with Mike, which is, I don't think would be true of anyone under similar conditions or so. He treats it like a sport, the driving like a sport. So I mean, he's constantly checking every single variable possible, how far something is, how the distance this is to that. So he has a very good awareness. Like the best way to illustrate it is sometimes we'd stop. You know, when we'd stop at the end of the day, you know, and he'd just be driving, he'd stop, and he'd almost basically, you know, he'd come out, and you know, as the focus would sort of dissipate, he'd collapse almost completely. Like, you know, he'd be utterly exhausted.
With Muslim women fully concealed in their burqas, riding in motorized rickshaws, this remote village felt like the real Pakistan. Because of the heavy monsoons and inadequate drainage, the road was almost impassable, and some motorists had obviously lost the battle, as was evident by the ever-increasing road carnage. Looks like they hit something. Driving accidents cause 3,000 deaths and 140,000 injuries per day around the world. Not surprising in this part of the world with many overloaded trucks, passengers on top of vehicles, or hanging precariously onto the back of open vans. Understandably, with rampant starvation and poverty, road safety is not their number one concern.
Four days later, we were in the city of Lahore. I drove the beast 5 kilometers to a small garage where I got the truck's air conditioner fan repaired. Meanwhile, I was getting extremely hot and needed to cool down.
It's called the Pakistan Society for Rehabilitation of the Disabled.
Oh, okay, great. So you are the premier facility within Lahore?
I think so.
We were warmly welcomed by the heads of the institution and taken on a tour of their facility.
You're treating a lot of people every day.
About 200 to 250 patients per day.
Wow.
Even more.
They come here for diathermy.
Again, I was struck by the intense overcrowded waiting rooms, lack of equipment, and the look of desperation on the faces of the many people with disabilities. I offered my opinions on running a successful organization and advice on advocacy.
The level of understanding is much more fundamental. Human rights, survival.
Of course, they can make little headway without money. And inevitably, we talked about obtaining enough funding to enact real change.
Sometimes I don't know what I have to complain about, my physical disability. Sometimes I don't know what any of us have to complain about when we see how much or how little some people have right from being born, or from a very young age. So you just go in, we do our bit, we see a little bit.
Well, if you've enjoyed watching the last 2 episodes in Pakistan, stay tuned for what India has in store.
There was a boom, sort of crashing sound.
Please remember that people with spinal cord injuries are suffering more than ever during the pandemic. And this is the time that our 3 vital charities need your support. Please show you care and donate generously. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and see you further down the road.